Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now, today we're going to be talking about tokenomics because this is something that is really, really important in crypto. And I think a lot of people, particularly those who are new, like if this is your first or maybe even your second cycle, if you weren't really paying too much attention last cycle, this can really make a massive difference in how you potentially do this upcoming cycle. And so that's why I want to talk about it today. So anyway, let's go on ahead and dive right in. So starting out, before we get into the nitty gritty of the tokenomics, I wanted to discuss just a quick market update where we're at today, how things are looking. What we can see is we are green on the day overall. We can see, several up pretty decent amounts. Radium has been one that's done quite well over the past couple of days, I guess you could say, maybe even a week at this point. And then we can also see that IMX is kind of the one leading the way down. This is because IMX did get a Wells notice, which frankly is really frustrating because it's essentially any crypto company that's had any level of success has gotten a Wells notice at this point, which is really frustrating because the SEC, it almost seems like they're picking on the winners, which I don't understand why you would be picking on the winners and those who are actually like trying to do something good in the space when all of these scammers and ruggers and everything like that is out there. Like it makes no sense at all. I frankly, the people leading the SEC at this point do not seem to be, they don't even seem to like be feigning having competence. Like they're just, it's clear that like what they're doing, at least in my opinion, seems to be in somewhat bad faith. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. What we can see is overall the market has recovered relatively well from what we've seen yesterday, though we are still down on the week, just kind of overall. So still kind of a mixed market. Bitcoin is kind of the one leading the way up. We'll get into that here in a second. But what I want to do right now is just talk about tokenomics, how they affect things, and we're going to use Helium as an example because Helium is a project that I was involved in very, very early on through last cycle. And so this is something that, I think kind of makes a decent bit of sense to talk about and use kind of like a real life example from me to show you guys kind of how tokenomics can work and even work on a project that's, in my opinion, has very, very high hopes for the future. And I'm no less bullish on it now than I was, 3-4 years ago when I first got into it. So anyway, that's kind of how I want to start talking about it today. The biggest thing that we can see over time is I want to look at two things. So we're going to start out looking at price, and then we're going to go and move back to market cap because this does kind of have an impact. And then we're also going to go over and look at Helium's tokenomics to essentially see how this happened over time. So anyway, what we can see right now, Helium sitting around 650. What we have seen is, in this cycle, we've seen highs of about 940, and that was earlier on in February. During the bear market, we saw lows, kind of, I don't think we ever got below $1, but we did get kind of like $1.20. And if we do look as far as price is concerned, we can actually see that these prices hit essentially the lows that we saw prior to this like complete massive run up that we saw in 2021. What we can see is all-time highs are, I think they were like $53 is what it looks like for all-time highs. So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as how price looks. Now, if we look at market cap, we can see something similar but fairly different, right? And so if we look here, we can see all-time high market cap was about 5.3 billion, and we can see down here, before the bull run, we were looking at like an $80 million market cap. And then after, when the prices were similar, we're at about $180 million market cap, maybe even closer to like 200. And so what we can see also is, in terms of market cap, this peak and this peak are very similar. Even this one, kind of similar as well. So if we look at the first peak, we can see like at this point in time, we're about, 1.474 billion at this like middle of the three peaks kind of before the massive run up. And we can see here we're at about 1.41 billion kind of at the top peak of February. So very, very similar in market cap price, however, or I guess in total market cap. But if we look at price, what we can see is the peak in February, again, as we looked at, it's about $9.50 was kind of the high here. And if we look at this middle peak, high was about $18.20. So double the price for about the same market cap. And that's kind of the moral to the story here, right? Is dilution matters, token unlocks matter, things like that. Helium didn't necessarily have massive unlocks or have massive like amounts locked up at the beginning given to like insiders or whatnot. But it just had a Bitcoin-esque like inflation, or I guess deflation schedule. So it started inflating really, really aggressively at the beginning, and then it kind of trails off over time. Again, we'll look at that here in a second. But what we can see is, even though the price is about half of what it was here, the market cap is still about the same. And even right now we can see fully diluted valuation is 1.4 billion, and we're at $6.50. Now keep in mind, in February we had not a fully diluted market cap, but a market cap of 1.4-ish billion. And so essentially, and that was at $9.58. And so technically, if we were fully diluted right now, this $6.50 and this $9.50 are essentially the same when it comes to looking at it from a market cap perspective. Also, as a quick aside, if you are finding the information in this video useful, please do give me a like and subscribe. This type of tokenomics information is usually not very well known, particularly with new crypto users. And so this is a video that I think is really important. And so in order to get it pushed out to more people, a like and subscribe really, really does go a long way. So anyway, if you would do that, that'd be great. Now, the really important thing that I want to talk about here is obviously like a very large difference in price, right? Well, we haven't even talked about this part, right? Where we saw it runs up to like $53 being its all-time high, and the market cap being, 5.3 billion. At this point, if we were to get to 5.3 billion at today's market cap, that'd be I guess it'd be just under a 5x here. But if we look at a 5x, it's going to be about $32.50. Again, $20 less than what it would have been here. And so this is kind of the key point that I want to make, is because, at least in my opinion, Helium is a project that I have massively high hopes for. I think it's done very, very well. I think if you ask anybody who is even remotely interested in deep within crypto, they're going to know about Helium. And there's a probability, I would say, that they actually think somewhat positively of Helium, because what Helium has done so far has actually been really quite impressive. Like, they're starting to build out their 5G network. It's showing pretty impressive and sustainable growth. We can see that Helium has kind of delivered over the past several years. I mean, they started out on their own blockchain. They've moved to Solana. They've had, they had kind of deprecated down to like IoT and mobile tokens that now roll up into this like overall Helium token. Like, they've done a pretty good job creating like an overall ecosystem around the project or like the idea that they're making. And it's pretty much like delivered relatively well so far. Obviously, they still have kind of some like hurdles to get over, but like Helium as an overall concept and an overall idea makes a ton of sense, right? Like this to me is very much like an Uber or an Airbnb model, right? Like, they're leveraging technology that did not exist before to do something in the market that is, one, more efficient, and two, like, could not be possible without the technology. And so, it seems to me at this point in time that Helium is kind of starting to hit that critical mass where like they probably will be successful. But even if they're not, like, I can completely see somebody doing this and being successful, because it makes sense, right? And so that's one thing that, like, my convictions for the project have not changed at all. But the problem is I had those convictions still here, right? And sometimes you need to decouple like your convictions of the project from like the expectation or like price expectations, and like has price detached from reality in a sense, right? And what we could see, like, I think, obviously hindsight being 2020, like, it's really, really hard to sell on the way up. And looking at this though, like in hindsight, pretty obvious that like this price, it was kind of detached a little bit from the reality of the situation at that point in time. And that's kind of essentially the moral to the story, right? Is like, you cannot, and this is why I say this constantly in almost every video, is you cannot marry your bags, because if you do, like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to round trip a 50x very, very easily. And so you have to make sure that like you are taking profits on the way up. And if for whatever reason, like, because one of my thoughts with Helium was like, well, even at this point, like at this price, like, it seems like it could be bigger than this, right? Yeah, it can be bigger than this, but it's very, very likely that you're going to see something like this, and then maybe something like this, and maybe something like this, right? So you have to play the cycles and just always make sure that you're staying cognizant of where you are in the larger cycle. Because with me being as big of a believer as I am in Helium, if I would have played this a little bit more intelligently, I could have sold off even just half at the absolute peak. I mean, I should have sold off more, but even let's just say if I would have sold off half, then I could have bought all of it and put all of it back into Helium at some point down here and 25x the size of my bag, right? Like there's a lot of things that I could have done and played this better. And so obviously, having this knowledge and taking it into this upcoming bull run, this is going to change a lot, obviously. And so that's one thing that I wanted to kind of show some of you guys today. If you are new to the crypto market, like, this is what can happen regardless of how good you think the project is, and regardless of like what your opinions are on it, right? And so I just want to kind of cover that. The other thing I want to go over is I have partnered with BTCC this month. They're a exchange that actually they do a lot of really, really interesting things. And so you obviously, you can see spot, we've got futures. They do allow leverage trading up to 500x in some cases, which is kind of nuts. But one of the things that BTCC does specifically that I think is pretty cool is you can go here and you can see that they actually have tokenized stocks and commodities. So if you want to buy, Apple or AMD or, Coinbase, some of these, like, you can see they've got a lot of the like large stocks within the market here. And you can see that, you could trade them here, which is pretty cool. Like, let's see, we want to do Apple. Not only can we trade Apple, but we can also leverage trade Apple, which is pretty cool. So, this site has been nice. It seems like very clean, very cool to use. It does have a demo trading aspect to it as well. So if you are wanting to kind of dip your toes in and try leverage trading, but you don't want to get wrecked, or you don't kind of want to expose yourself to that level of like risk, you can always come in, sign up for a BTCC account, and then just do some demo trading, kind of test it out, make sure that like you feel comfortable before you actually dive in all the way. And so if you are interested, I do have a link in the description below to BTCC. You can get signed up and get things trading and get started out here. Overall, like I said, I've been very impressed with it. It's very, very like flexible. It's got a ton of different options in terms of like, it probably has anything that you're wanting, whether you want to trade futures, whether you just want to trade spot, whether you want to copy trade. Like, there's a lot of different things here to do. So, like I said, if you are interested, check out the link in the description below. The next thing I want to check out is the Helium tokenomics before we kind of wrap up here. And this is essentially kind of going back to the chart and showing how, like, we hit the same market cap at half the price. And that's because of this. And so what we can see is on August 1st, 2019, no Helium existed, right? They had an emission schedule, and they are essentially targeting, like, this is what their emissions schedule target was for this year, and it halves every 2 years. So you can see at the end of the second year, it had 120 of its total 223 million H&T in circulation. And what we saw is, if we look back at the price, we hit a peak at November of 2021. That's kind of like when the max peak was, right? And so there was 120 million in circulation, probably maybe a little bit more at that point, maybe like 130 million. But all through the bear market, we saw more and more printing until, where we are right now, where we're probably just close to 200 million at this point in time. So we essentially went from, 130 to 200 million, all in the same time that price was also going down, right? And so this is essentially kind of how this happens, right? Where price goes up and market cap goes way up, but price doesn't move as far up as market cap used to, right? And so that's kind of how that works. And so we can see this is essentially kind of how they've done it. There's a couple more like nuances that they've added to their tokenomics, meaning that they'll do net emissions. And this is something essentially to like help kind of keep the network in more of like a supply and demand balance. So they will actually emit. So they will now actually emit helium like comparable to the amount burned. But even if, like, let's say there's 2,000 helium burned, they can only emit up to 1,600. So it keeps kind of a deflationary pressure on helium overall. And so this is something that will be interesting to see, especially if they kind of add this deflationary mechanism and it actually starts to become deflationary. Then we could, potentially see this max cap start to lower. And then we see helium price kind of do the opposite, right? Helium price might continue to go up and the market cap could stay exactly the same. And that's just because the circulating supply is now decreasing. So anyway, that's something to take a look at here with tokenomics. But one thing I would say is just always be very, very careful when you're looking here. You need to understand, like, what is the inflation schedule? What are the token unlocks? If we're looking at like more of a VC coin, like, when are these like unlock cliffs happening? Solana, part of the reason they got their price pushed so far down in the bear market is because there were a couple like pretty large like VC unlocks that happened in the middle of the bear market, and a lot of them, you know, kind of dumped their coins as soon as they unlocked. So that was another thing that you also need to kind of keep an eye on, is making sure that token unlocks are like not going to wreck you as well. So anyway, that's kind of a quick and overall just kind of like overview of tokenomics and why you should be concerned about them, and why, and kind of how to look at them, how to kind of figure out like, are these tokenomics good? Are they bad? Are they helpful? Are they not helpful? And kind of looking into that, because overall, I'll just kind of say it again, like, you can have the most conviction of anybody on the planet in a particular project, but like, that doesn't mean it's just going to be up only forever, right? And so if you start to see some crazy, you know, parabolic growth, blow off top type of gains, like, always secure them. It doesn't really matter if you think it's going to go to $10 billion a token or whatever. Just secure the gains on the way up. I can almost guarantee you'll have an opportunity to buy them at a cheaper price. So anyway, hopefully the information in this video was useful. If it was, please do give me a like and subscribe, especially with information like this, where I feel like it's really, really beneficial for, you know, some of these more inexperienced like crypto traders. I really do want to get this pushed out to as many people as possible, just because I do think this information is really like very essential for people to understand and to know. So if you could help me do that by giving me a like and subscribe, it really, really would mean a lot to me, and I would appreciate it. Also, if you have any comments or concerns or anything like that, feel free to drop in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of my comments. If you have anything that you want me to see or reply to, or whatever, have any questions, things like that, that would be the best way to do that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.